The day humanity left the Council was the day the Cosmos Part 1, the great chamber of the Galactic Concord Council, hung in silent orbit above Xylos Prime, a jewel of glass and light spinning slowly against the black. Inside, 53 species sat in tiered circles, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some were tall and slender with skin like polished stone. Others floated in nutrient-filled globes, and a few communicated through scent or color shifts invisible to human eyes. Among them, at the very edge of the lowest ring, sat the human delegation. Ambassador Daniel Brooks adjusted his collar, the stiff fabric of his navy blue uniform feeling tighter than usual. Beside him, Captain Lisa Morgan kept her hands folded in her lap, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp, scanning the room like a hawk over open fields. She wore the same uniform but with silver insignia on her shoulders, and a thin scar running from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone, a souvenir from the Helios Rift incident that had brought them here. Today the air hummed with low-frequency tones, the Council's way of maintaining calm during tense sessions. But calm was slipping away. The elder Valen delegate, his long limbs draped in flowing silver robes, rose slowly from his seat. His voice, translated through the chamber's universal field, came out smooth and measured like water over glass. The human species has once again acted outside the bounds of Concord law, he said. In the Helios Rift, they engaged Krell vessels without authorization. They destroyed 3 raiders and damaged a civilian freighter in the process. This is not defense. This is provocation. Daniel stood. With respect, Elder Valen, the freighter was carrying medical supplies bound for the outer colonies. The Krell were looting it. We intervened to protect neutral lives. The Concord had already assigned peacekeepers to that sector. Cut in a Drake representative, his armored hide clicking as he shifted. Your ships arrived unannounced, fired without warning, and left before our observers could assess the situation. You act like wild dogs among civilized beings. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Daniel kept his voice even. We acted because your peacekeepers were 3 days away. The freighter would have been stripped, and its crew sold into slavery by then. Sometimes waiting for permission means letting people die. The Jor delegate, a small, many-eyed creature seated in a wheeled pod, chimed in through a series of soft beeps that the field turned into words. Humanity's impulsiveness is well documented. Your species has only been spacefaring for 200 of your years. You lack the patience, the wisdom, the restraint required of full Concord members. We learn fast, Daniel replied. Too fast, said Elder Valen. You push boundaries. You question protocols. You build weapons your neighbors fear. And now you defy direct orders. He paused, letting the silence grow heavy. The Council has debated your status for months. Today we vote. A hush fell over the chamber. The Council's central dais lit up with soft blue glyphs as each species cast its vote through private neural links. Humans had no such luxury. They watched, waiting as the seconds stretched into minutes. Daniel glanced at Lisa. She gave him the smallest nod. No fear, no regret. The results appeared in the air above the dais. 52 votes in favor, 1 abstention, the Quill, who never voted on anything. The motion passed. Elder Valen turned to the humans, his expression unreadable. By unanimous decision of the Galactic Concord Council, humanity is hereby expelled from all council bodies, trade networks, and mutual defense pacts. Your delegation is to depart Xylos Prime within 6 standard hours. You are no longer welcome among us. No one clapped. No one spoke. The other delegates simply turned away as if the humans had already vanished. Daniel bowed slightly, a gesture of formality, not submission. Thank you for your time, he said, and walked out without looking back. Lisa followed, her boots clicking softly against the polished floor. Outside the chamber, in the quiet corridor that led to the human shuttle bay, Daniel finally let out a slow breath. They really did it. They were going to do it anyway, Lisa said. The Helios Rift was just the excuse. What do you think they're afraid of? Us. She stopped walking and faced him. Not our ships. Not our weapons, us, the way we don't wait. The way we don't ask. The way we look at a problem and say, we'll fix it ourselves if no one else will. That terrifies them. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe they're right to be scared. Back on the shuttle, the pilot, a young man named Carter, gave them a grim nod as they boarded. Heard the news. Yeah, Daniel said, strapping in. Set course for Earth. As the shuttle lifted off, Xylos Prime shrinking behind them, Lisa stared out the viewport at the stars. They looked the same as always, cold, distant, indifferent. But something had changed. Not in the cosmos, but in humanity's place within it. They were alone now. No treaties, no allies. No safety net, but also no rules. No limits. No one to tell them no. She thought about the shipyards back home, the labs on Mars, the engineers working double shifts on projects the Concord had banned as too aggressive. She thought about the quiet anger simmering on Earth, not of despair, but of determination. They had been cast out like children who wouldn't obey, but children grow up, and sometimes they come back stronger. As the shuttle jumped to light speed, Lisa leaned back and closed her eyes. She didn't say it out loud, but the words formed clearly in her mind. They just made a mistake they won't live to regret. The day humanity left the Council was the day the Cosmos Part 2 Earth felt different, the moment Daniel and Lisa stepped off the shuttle. It wasn't the air or the sky, it was the silence. No fanfare, no angry protests, no panicked news broadcasts blaring from every screen. Just quiet streets, steady lights, and people going about their work with a new kind of focus in their eyes. President Alan Ruiz met them at the orbital terminal, not in a suit but in a simple gray tunic with the Earth emblem stitched over his heart. He shook Daniel's hand and nodded to Lisa. "Welcome home," he said. "No blame, no shame, just home." That night, from every city, town, and colony across the Sol system, people watched as Ruiz stood before the global assembly and spoke plainly. They told us we were too loud, too fast, too reckless. They said we didn't belong. Fine, we'll build our own table, and we'll make sure it's strong enough to hold the weight of what's coming. The next morning, the real work began. Shipyards around Jupiter's moons lit up like newborn stars. Lunar factories that once made solar panels and habitat modules now poured molten metal into hull forms, unlike anything the Concorde had ever seen. Sleek, angular, built for speed and surprise. On Mars, engineers tore up old safety protocols and ran simulations that would have made Concorde regulators faint. Quantum drives hummed in test chambers, pushing past theoretical limits the elder races had declared impossible. Lisa was assigned to command the New Frontier Initiative, a secret project buried deep beneath Ceres Station. There, scientists studied a signal picked up weeks before the expulsion, a faint echo from a dead zone near the Helios Rift. It wasn't natural. It pulsed in a pattern too regular, too precise. "It's coming from a structure," said Dr. Eli Parker, a soft-spoken astrophysicist with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers. "Not a ship. Something bigger. Maybe a station. Or a tomb. Or a weapon," Lisa said. "Or a key," Eli replied. "They sent a probe. It came back with images of a massive ring-shaped object, half buried in an asteroid field, its surface covered in symbols no known language could translate. The Concorde had marked the area as forbidden, dangerous remnants of pre-Council era. But humanity wasn't part of the Council anymore. 3 weeks later, Lisa led a small crew aboard the SS Odyssey, a prototype stealth frigate with a drive that bent light around it like water. They slipped past Concorde patrol drones, their sensors blind to the Odyssey's signature. When they reached the ring, it was silent, dark, ancient. Inside, they found corridors lined with crystalline panels that lit up at their touch. Walls shifted. Doors opened without sound. And in the central chamber, floating above a pedestal of black stone, was a single artifact, a sphere no bigger than a human head, glowing with soft blue light. As Lisa reached for it, the sphere pulsed. Images flooded her mind, not words but feelings. A warning. A countdown. Something vast and slow moving toward the heart of the galaxy, eating stars as it went, and a network of gates scattered across space built to stop it. She grabbed the sphere. The moment her fingers closed around it, the entire structure shuddered. Lights dimmed. The Odyssey's alarms blared. They barely made it out before the ring collapsed into dust. Back on Ceres, Eli and his team worked around the clock to decode the sphere's data. It wasn't just a map, it was instructions. Blueprints for energy systems, propulsion methods, even biological enhancements that could link human minds directly to ship controls. All of it banned by the Concorde as unethical or unstable. But humanity had no ethics board to answer to now. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy watched from a distance. Concorde surveillance drones hovered at the edge of human space, recording everything. They saw freighters rerouted, colonies reinforcing their shields, and military drills happening in asteroid belts. They assumed humanity was panicking, curling inward, preparing for isolation. They were wrong. On Earth, schools added new courses: xenolinguistics, zero-gravity combat, quantum navigation. Teenagers built drone swarms in garage labs. Retired pilots returned to service. Factories that once made consumer goods now produced fusion cores and neural interface chips. Even the arts changed. Music grew sharper, faster. Films told stories of lone explorers, of builders in the dark, of people who refused to kneel. The phrase "we do it ourselves" became a quiet mantra, whispered in shipyards, classrooms, and kitchens alike. Daniel, now serving as Earth's chief liaison for off-world strategy, met weekly with Ruiz and Fleet Command. They didn't plan for war, not yet. They planned for survival, for independence, for the day they might have to stand alone against something far worse than the Concorde's disapproval. One evening, Daniel stood on the observation deck of Orbital Command, watching a new battleship, named the Liberty, slide out of dry dock. Its hull gleamed under the sun, its weapon port still covered, but its shape spoke of purpose. Lisa joined him, holding a data pad with the latest readings from the sphere. "They think we're fading," she said. "Let them think that," Daniel replied. "They have no idea what we found." "And they won't," he said, "until it's too late for them to stop us or too late for them to be saved by us." Back on Xylos Prime, the Concorde celebrated. Elder Valen gave a speech about restoring order and removing a disruptive element. Trade resumed as usual. The Krell even received a formal apology for the unfortunate misunderstanding in the Helios Rift. But in the quiet corners of the Council, doubt began to creep in. Why hadn't humanity begged? Why hadn't they sent envoys pleading for reconsideration? Why was their space so quiet? They didn't know that silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. On Mars, a young engineer named Jake Reyes welded the final joint on a new type of shield generator, one that didn't just block energy, but absorbed it and fired it back stronger. On Titan, a team of pilots tested a maneuver so risky it had a 70% simulated fatality rate. They ran it anyway, and deep in the void, near the edge of known space, the Odyssey's crew began training for their next mission. This time, not to recover but to activate, because the sphere had shown them more than danger. It had shown them a choice, and humanity had already chosen. They would not wait for permission to save the galaxy. They would not ask for a seat at the table. They would build their own, and invite only those willing to fight beside them. As the sun rose over the Pacific, casting gold across the waves, a single message scrolled across every military and research terminal in human space. Phase 1 complete. Begin Phase 2. No fanfare, no speeches, just work. And in the silence, the cosmos held its breath. The day humanity left the Council was the day the cosmos part 3, 6 months after the expulsion. The Krell Confederacy made their move. They had watched human space grow quiet, seen trade routes shift away, heard the silence where human voices once argued in council halls. To them, it looked like weakness, and weakness in their eyes was an invitation. Their fleet struck without warning. 36 warships dropped out of warp near Proxima Centauri b, targeting the outer colonies, small settlements of farmers, miners, and engineers who had chosen to live on the edge of human space. The Krell expected little resistance. They expected to strip the colonies clean, take slaves, and send a message to any other species that might consider defying the Concorde's new order. What they found was not fear, but fire. The first Krell ship never fired a shot. As it powered up its plasma cannons, a swarm of tiny dart-like drones, no bigger than a human hand, erupted from hidden launchers on the colony's defense platforms. They moved in perfect sync, weaving through debris and sensor jamming, and latched onto the ship's hull. 3 seconds later, the Krell vessel exploded from the inside out, its own power core overloaded by the drone's feedback pulse. On the bridge of the Terran defense flagship Aegis, Admiral Daniel Brooks watched the feed with calm eyes. Beside him, Captain Lisa Morgan gave a short nod. Phase 2 is live. The Krell commander, a battle-scarred veteran named Croth, snarled orders to his fleet. Burn the platforms. Ignore the drones. Target the colony dome. But before they could lock weapons, the void around them rippled. Space itself seemed to bend. And from the distortion emerged 7 human warships, sleek, black-hulled, moving without engine trails. They were the new Liberty-class destroyers, built in secret on the far side of Neptune. What happened next shocked every observer in the sector, including the Concorde surveillance drones hiding behind asteroids. The human ships didn't form a line. They didn't follow standard engagement patterns. Instead, they scattered like birds, each moving independently but reacting as one. When a Krell cruiser fired a broadside, two human destroyers dodged in opposite directions, then curved back toward each other, crossing paths so precisely that the Krell's targeting systems locked onto their own ship's reflection in the human shields. Those shields were unlike anything seen before. They shimmered with a faint silver-blue light, not just blocking energy but bending it, redirecting it. One Krell plasma bolt struck the Aegis's shield, and a second later a beam of the same energy lanced back at the firing ship, twice as strong. Kroth's comms officer shouted, "Their tech, it's adapting." It was true. The human fleet used neural-linked combat AI, trained on millions of simulated battles, learning the Krell's tactics in real time. Every shot the Krell fired taught the humans how to counter it better. Within 20 minutes, half the Krell fleet was gone. Kroth ordered a retreat. His flagship, the Iron Maw, spun hard and engaged its warp drive. But as it began to vanish into subspace, something strange happened. The stars around it dimmed. Space folded inward like crumpled paper. The Iron Maw froze mid-jump, caught in a bubble of distorted gravity. On the Aegis, Lisa watched the readings. Gravity pulse deployed. Gate anchor holding. The weapon was based on the sphere's data, a localized space-time lock harmless to nearby colonies but devastating to ships trying to flee. The Iron Maw hung helpless, its engines dead, its crew screaming over open channels. Daniel gave the order, "Disable, don't destroy." A single drone shot forward, latching onto the Krell flagship's bridge. 10 seconds later, the ship powered down completely. The battle was over. Back on Earth, the news spread fast, not through official channels, but through civilian comms, social feeds, and colony broadcasts. People didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They just nodded, as if they'd expected nothing less. But across the galaxy, the reaction was different. On Xylos Prime, the Concorde emergency session lasted all night. Elder Valen stared at the battle footage, his usual calm replaced by something close to dread. The Drake delegate pounded his armored fist on the table. "They used forbidden tech. That gravity weapon, it's from the dead zones. They're playing with forces they don't understand. They understand enough to win," said the Zor delegate quietly. The footage showed more than victory. It showed evolution. Human ships moved with a fluidity that defied physics. Their tactics were chaotic yet precise. Their weapons didn't just kill, they learned. Worst of all, they showed mercy. They captured the Krell flagship instead of destroying it. They offered medical aid to survivors. They broadcast a simple message on all open frequencies. This was your choice. Next time, think twice. The Concorde had expected humanity to crumble without their support. Instead, humanity had built something new, something faster, smarter, and far more dangerous. On Ceres Station, Lisa reviewed the after-action report. Casualties, 0. Civilian damage, minimal. Krell prisoners, 42, all treated according to human wartime code. Daniel joined her in the command center. "They'll call it aggression," he said. "Let them," Lisa replied. "We defended our people. That's all that matters." But she knew it was more than that. The battle wasn't just about Proxima. It was a message. To the Krell, to the Concorde, to every species watching from the shadows. Humanity was not broken. They were awake. In the days that followed, human patrols expanded, not to conquer but to protect. They escorted freighters through pirate-infested lanes. They helped a stranded Quarn vessel repair its drive. They even returned a lost Drake scout ship, undamaged with a data chip containing safe routes through a nearby nebula. No demands, no conditions, just help. The Concorde didn't know what to make of it. Some called it a trick. Others whispered that humanity had changed into something they couldn't control. Deep in the core of the Aegis, the sphere pulsed softly in its containment field. It had shown them the entropy wave. It had shown them the gates. And now, it seemed to say, it was time to prepare for what came next. Because the Krell were just the beginning. The real threat was still out there. Silent, patient, eating stars one by one. And humanity, alone and unafraid, was the only ones moving to stop it. As the Aegis turned toward home, its hull scarred but proud, Lisa looked out at the stars and thought of the words she'd once whispered in the council chamber. They just made a mistake they won't live to regret. Now, the whole galaxy was starting to understand. The day humanity left the Council was the day the cosmos part 4 weeks after the battle at Proxima. Captain Lisa Morgan stood alone in the deep vault beneath Ceres Station, staring at the glowing sphere. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat, and with every beat, new data flowed into the station's core systems. Dr. Eli Parker and his team had spent every waking hour decoding its signals, and now, they finally understood. The sphere was not just a map or a weapon, it was a key and a warning. At the center of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of any known species, something was dying. Not a planet or a star, but space itself. A slow wave of entropy, invisible to normal sensors, was spreading outward from the core, unraveling matter, extinguishing light, turning entire systems into cold, empty voids. The wave moved slowly, so slowly that most civilizations wouldn't notice until it was too late. But it was real, and it was growing. The sphere showed images of ancient structures, massive rings hidden in dead zones, buried in nebulae, tucked behind black holes. These were the gateways built by a race called the Architects, who had vanished millions of years ago. The gates weren't for travel. They were for defense. Linked together, they could generate a field strong enough to halt the entropy wave, but only if activated in the right sequence, only if powered by drives capable of stabilizing quantum fluctuations, and only if controlled by minds fast enough to manage the feedback. The Concord had known about the gates. They had found fragments of the same data centuries ago, but instead of acting, they buried it. Too dangerous, they said. Too unpredictable. Better to ignore it than risk chaos. Humanity had no such luxury. President Ruiz approved Operation Guardian without hesitation. The mission was simple: find the nearest functional gate, activate it, and test the network. Lisa would lead the expedition aboard the Odyssey, now upgraded with the latest drive tech and shield systems. The target was in the Orion Veil, a turbulent region of ion storms and gravitational eddies that most species avoided. The Concord had marked it as unstable. To humans, it was just another problem to solve. The Odyssey slipped through the storms like a shadow. Its new drive bent space around it, smoothing out the turbulence. Inside, the crew worked in focused silence. Jake Reyes monitored the shield harmonics, while Carter, now promoted to flight commander, plotted the final approach. When they arrived, the gate was exactly as the sphere had shown. A ring of black metal, half a kilometer wide, floating in perfect stillness amid the chaos. It looked dead, no lights, no energy readings. Lisa ordered a probe launched. The moment it touched the ring's surface, the entire structure lit up. Symbols flared to life, matching those in the sphere's data. The gate was waiting, but activating it required more than power. It needed a pilot, a human mind linked directly to the control node. The Architects had designed it that way. Only a species willing to risk its own consciousness could prove it was ready. Lisa didn't hesitate. She suited up, connected the neural tether, and stepped onto the gate's inner platform. As the link engaged, her vision filled with stars, not as they were, but as they would be. She saw systems blink out, planets turn to dust, civilizations vanish without a sound, and at the center of it all, a darkness that hungered. Then came the choice: activate the gate and join the network, or walk away and let the wave continue. She chose. Energy surged through the ring. Light erupted in every color imaginable. The Odyssey's sensor screamed as space folded around them. For a moment, Lisa felt herself stretched across light years, connected to other gates, other minds, other times. Then it stopped. The gate was active. Back on Earth, alarms rang not from danger, but from discovery. The sphere's data updated instantly. 3 more gates had responded to the activation. 1 near the Drake homeworld, 1 in Zor territory, and 1 deep in Veln space. The network was waking up. But there was a problem. The other gates were failing. Their power cores were degraded, their control systems corrupted. Without repair, they would collapse within months, leaving the entropy wave unchecked, and only human technology could fix them. The Concord learned of the activation within hours. Their long-range sensors detected the energy spike. At first, they assumed humanity had triggered a weapon. Panic spread through Xylos Prime. Fleets were put on alert. Emergency broadcasts warned of human aggression. Then the data came in, not from human sources, but from their own deep space observatories. They saw it. The entropy wave. Real. Unstoppable. And closer than anyone had guessed. Elder Valen called an emergency session. This time there was no calm. The Drake delegate demanded immediate action. De Jure pleaded for cooperation. Even the usually silent Quill sent a single message. The Guardians are needed. They had no choice. A week later, a Concord envoy ship arrived at the edge of human space. It flew no weapons. Its comms broadcast a simple request. We seek audience with Earth's leadership. President Ruiz agreed, but on human terms. The meeting would take place aboard the Aegis in neutral orbit near Mars. The envoy was a young Velen named Kael, chosen for his knowledge of human culture. He stepped onto the ship with visible unease. Daniel greeted him not with suspicion but with quiet respect. You know why we're here, Kael said. Yes, Daniel replied. You need our help. The gates. They're failing. Your activation proved they work. But we cannot stabilize them. Our drives lack the precision. Our minds cannot interface with the control nodes. Because the architects built them for species who act. Not wait, Lisa said, stepping forward. Kael looked at her, then at the sphere's data displayed on the wall. We were wrong, he admitted. We thought order meant control. But order without courage is just delay. Daniel nodded. We'll help. But not under the old rules. He laid out the terms. The Concord must dissolve its hierarchy. All species, big or small, must have equal voice. Joint defense would be led by a new coalition, with Earth as its operational center, and human engineers would oversee all gate repairs. Kael didn't argue. He simply said, I will present this to the Council. As his ship departed, Lisa watched from the observation deck. They'll say no, she said. Maybe, Daniel replied. But now they know the truth. And fear changes minds faster than pride ever could. Deep in the galaxy, the entropy wave crept closer, and for the first time in centuries, the cosmos held its breath, not in judgment, but in hope. The day humanity left the Council was the day the Cosmos Part 5, the Velen colony of Silas Prime, vanished without sound. One moment, its twin suns shone over silver forests and crystal cities. The next, the stars around it dimmed. The light stretched thin, and the world simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just empty space where a civilization of 8 billion had lived for 10,000 years. The footage spread faster than any war had before. It played on every Concord channel, in every public square, in every ship's comm array. For the first time, the entropy wave was not a theory or a distant threat. It was real. And it was hungry. Within hours, Elder Valen sent a direct transmission to Earth. His voice, once calm and measured, now carried the weight of grief. We accept your terms, no debate, no conditions, just surrender to necessity. The new coalition formed in record time. The old Concord was dissolved. In its place rose the United Defense Pact, a council of equals, with representatives from 53 species, including those once ignored as lesser. Earth was named Operational Command not by demand but by need. Only human ships could safely navigate the gate network. Only human engineers understood the architect's systems. Only human minds could interface with the control nodes without burning out. Shipyards across the galaxy opened their doors to human technicians. On Drake Forge worlds, Martian engineers worked alongside armored smiths to retrofit alien hulls with quantum stabilizers. In Zor orbital labs, Earth scientists and many-eyed researchers combined bio-neural tech with Concord shielding. Even the reclusive Quile sent silent drones filled with rare crystals that amplified gate signals. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the Aegis, now the flagship of the entire Coalition fleet. Around her, the crew was no longer just human. A young Velen navigator plotted jump coordinates. A Drake weapons officer ran diagnostics on hybrid cannons. A Zorcom specialist monitored signals from a dozen worlds. They were no longer separate. They were one. Admiral Daniel Brooks oversaw the final preparations from Orbital Command. President Ruiz had given him full authority. No politics, no delays. Just action. The plan was simple. Activate all 7 primary gates, link them into a single field, and push back the entropy wave before it reached the inner systems. The mission would begin at the central gate, deep in the galactic core. It was the most dangerous location. The wave was strongest there, space itself unstable, but it was also the only place the network could be fully synchronized. The Coalition fleet assembled in the void beyond Neptune, over 300 ships from 53 species painted with new insignia, a circle of stars surrounding a single open hand. The symbol of unity, forged not by treaty but by shared survival. As the fleet prepared to jump, a young Zor technician named Nira approached Lisa on the Aegis's lower deck. She held a data slate with trembling limbs. "Captain," she said through her translator, "I have studied your history. After the Council cast you out, why did you come back?" Lisa looked at her, then out the viewport at the gathered fleet. Ships that once called humanity reckless now flying under the same banner. "Because someone had to," she said. Nira blinked her many eyes. "We thought you would let us fall." "We're not like that," Lisa said. "We fight for people who can't fight for themselves, even if they don't deserve it." The jump sequence began. One by one the gates opened, their rings blazing with blue-white light. The fleet moved through in perfect order, human ships leading the way, their drives stabilizing the path for the rest. At the core, the darkness waited. Stars flickered like dying candles, space twisted in unnatural shapes. The entropy wave pulsed like a slow cosmic heartbeat. Lisa linked her mind to the central gate. Again she saw the unraveling. Worlds turning to dust, time itself fraying at the edges. But this time she was not alone. Through the network she felt the minds of pilots from every species, all connected, all focused on one goal. "Now," she whispered. Energy surged. The gates flared. A field of pure order erupted from the rings, pushing against the wave like a wall of light against a tide of shadow. For a moment nothing happened. Then slowly the wave began to recede. It would not vanish. It could not be destroyed. But it could be held back. On the Aegis, alarms blared, not from damage but from success. The field was holding. The galaxy was safe. For now. Back on Earth, people watched the live feed in silence. No cheers, no speeches, just quiet relief and a new understanding. Humanity had not returned for glory. They had returned because it was right. In the weeks that followed, the coalition began rebuilding, not just ships and stations, but trust. The Veln shared ancient star maps. The Drake offered their forges for joint construction. The Zhor opened their archives to human scholars, and the Quill, for the first time in recorded history, sent a message with words. "Thank you." Daniel stood with Lisa on the observation deck of Orbital Command, watching a new ship launch, a joint human-Veln explorer, bound for the Outer Rim to search for more gates. "They'll never forget what we did," Daniel said. "They shouldn't," Lisa replied. "But we didn't do it for them to remember. We did it because it needed doing." Far away in the quiet dark between galaxies, the architect's signal still pulsed, faint but steady, as if watching, as if waiting. Humanity had been cast out for being too bold, too fast, too willing to act when others hesitated. But in the end, that was exactly what the cosmos needed. Not obedience, not patience, but courage. And on that day, as the coalition fleet turned toward home, the stars burned a little brighter, not because the darkness was gone, but because someone had stood against it, someone had said no, and that someone was human.